With the nation in economic freefall and the world in turmoil, a new leader takes the helm to guide his nation through its darkest hours. On March 4th, 1933, Franklin Roosevelt becomes the 32nd U.S. president. FDR is born in 1882 to a wealthy family in Hyde Park, New York. He decides to follow his fifth cousin Theodore Roosevelt's example by going into politics, but does so with a different political party. President Woodrow Wilson names FDR as Assistant Secretary of the Navy in 1913, a position cousin Teddy held 15 years earlier. FDR serves in that post throughout World War I. He is stricken with polio in 1921 at age 39. His legs are permanently paralyzed. The Great Depression hits in 1929, just months after Herbert Hoover becomes president. FDR runs against Hoover in 1932. With the economy as the top campaign issue, it's a landslide. In his inaugural address, FDR outlines his New Deal and tells Americans that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. FDR guides the nation through the Great Depression and World War II. He is one of the few presidents with a memorial in Washington, D.C. Stay tuned because we've got more about the Roosevelt family and FDR's political career. And we'll answer the burning question, did FDR really marry his cousin? Also, you can learn more about FDR's battle with polio and how the disease has since been eradicated from my February 23rd video. There's a link right up here. You can also find a link to that video at the end of this video, as well as in the description. Additionally, don't forget to check out Today in History in my Teachers Pay Teachers store. There's a link in the description. The first Roosevelt comes to America from the Netherlands in the mid-1600s, when New York is still New Amsterdam. FDR's mother, of French Huguenot ancestry, is from the prominent Delano family, which made a fortune in the opium trade and married into the Astor dynasty. FDR's father is a Roosevelt from Hyde Park, about 70 miles up the Hudson River from Manhattan. FDR's fifth cousin, Theodore Roosevelt, is from Long Island's Oyster Bay branch of the family. He becomes president in 1901 when FDR is 19 years old. While attending Columbia University in the law school in 1905, FDR marries Eleanor Roosevelt, whom he had met 3 years earlier on a train. She is Theodore's niece and therefore Franklin's fifth cousin once removed. President Theodore Roosevelt attends the St. Patrick's Day wedding in New York City, making the event front page news. When asked about the Roosevelt-Roosevelt union, Teddy says, "It's good to keep the name in the family." So, did FDR really marry his cousin? Well, yes. Some people make a big deal of this fact. In reality, they're not that closely related. The fact that they share a surname makes it seem closer than it is. How many of you know any cousin beyond a second or maybe a third cousin? I mean, let's be realistic here. Let me put it this way. Franklin's great-great-great-great-grandfather, that's four greats, Nicholas Roosevelt, born in 1658, is Eleanor's great-great-great-great-great-grandfather. That's five greats. I think many of us could find closer relations than this within our own family trees. Okay, let's get to more on FDR's political career. So he's elected to the New York State Senate in 1910, and then while serving as Assistant Secretary of the Navy in 1914, FDR runs in the Democratic primary for the U.S. Senate, and he loses. And then he makes a run at vice president in 1920, but he loses in that primary as well. He begins to make his political comeback, however, after recovering from polio. And this happens in 1924 when he gives the speech nominating New York Governor Alfred Smith as the Democratic candidate for president. Smith loses to Calvin Coolidge. And then FDR nominates Smith again in 1928. And Smith loses again, this time to Herbert Hoover. Now, many at the time blame Herbert Hoover for the Great Depression. I feel this is in many ways unfair. The seeds of the Depression are sown long before Hoover's watch begins. However, Hoover does deserve blame for not reacting more aggressively when the Depression hits. Now, to be fair, no financial crisis of that magnitude had ever hit the nation before. And so it's understandable that Hoover, like many experts at the time, that he believes that aggressive government intervention would be an overreaction. The nation had made it through previous financial crises without any major government action, and so he and others believed that the same would play out this time around. Of course, it does not. Now, to Hoover's credit, after the attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941, he puts country before party and issues this press statement. Today, there is just one job before the American people. We must defeat this invasion by Japan and must fight it in any place that will defeat it. Upon this job, we must have and will have unity in America. We must have and will have full support for the President of the United States in this war to defend America. We will have victory. End quote. One major consequence, of course, of FDR's presidency is that the federal government plays a much bigger role in all of our lives than it did before his presidency. And there are certainly arguments on both sides as to whether this should be considered more of a negative or a positive consequence. Well, if you liked what you've seen today on Learn with Mr. Lewis, please make sure to like and subscribe. And remember, you can watch more of my videos right here. You can find that polio video from February 23rd that I talked about. And over here, you can find another one of my videos. Thanks again.